Listeners of this show might have heard me say before that we are living in the future. And when you think about it, with all the technology out there today, it's really a pretty incredible time to be alive. We can even get our DNA sequenced and mapped by companies in order to see our ancestry and genealogy. With this technology, though, comes issues of privacy. What happens when one of those genetic mapping companies gets hacked and experiences a data breach? Well, Ericka Watson is the principal and CEO of a company called Data Strategy Advisors. They are a consultant agency supporting privacy operations for organizations. Ericka is from Chicago originally, and we could check out the website datastrategyadvisors.com. Ericka, welcome to Outside the Loop.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
You're welcome. So can you just explain to us, when someone gives a DNA sample to one of these companies, what happens? How does this work?
Your genome is a full set of DNA. It's the instruction manual for your body. It determines everything from your eye color to your health risk and ancestry. It's not just personal, it's unique to you. Mm-hmm. So sharing your genome is like sharing the master key to your biological identity and your family's identity, your ancestors. So once it's out there, it's really hard to pull it back. You can't change it like a password. So I want to make sure that the listeners understand what DNA is, first and foremost. The question you asked is, what happens when these companies get that vial of saliva? They take that, they sequence your genome, which are made up of the strains of DNA, to understand your makeup and who you may have chromosomal matches with.
Basically, what we are doing here when we are providing these DNA samples to these companies, we're giving them the biological blueprint of all of us. And the way that this works is the more people, I would think, the more people that submit those DNA samples, the bigger the database becomes, and then they can have more to pull from. You know, just in terms of privacy there, I'm wondering, are these all stored on a computer somewhere? Is there a master file with all of these millions of genetic codes just kind of sitting somewhere?
Yeah, well, it's sitting on a server. Sure, it's very secure. They have the right security around the physical infrastructure where this data sits. This has been a very big year for data breaches. 23andMe, they had a major data breach late last year, where 7 million users' data and genetic data were exposed. This included, their detailed ancestry reports, their DNA matches, their family connections, and the company, although they had appropriate infrastructure and physical controls and probably technical controls as well, this was a result of what's called credential stuffing, where the hackers use stolen passwords from other sites to access user accounts. So say you may use your username and your password is 1234. Mm-hmm. And you use that across multiple accounts, including your business accounts. This culprit, this hacker knows Michael works at WGN. So let me go ahead and use the username that he used on his personal account. Let me see if I can get in, right? So that's pretty much what they did to gain access to this environment that held all this genetic data of 7 million users.
Wow. So 23andMe, one of these companies that does this genetic mapping and the ancestry and the research and all that. The issue here is that, okay, when there's a data breach that happens, who knows who could get it and obtain that personal blueprint. And I know that another issue is when a company gets bought out. I mean, if a company is acquired by another company, what happens to all of that information, all that genetic code? We maybe don't know where it goes.
That's really true. We just saw earlier this year that Ancestry was acquired by Blackstone, and that's a private equity firm. That sparked a lot of concerns about how genetic data may be monetized. It also sparked a lot of concerns around what are they going to do with my data? Are they going to live up to the obligations that were set out in the terms of use and privacy policy of Ancestry when I gave over my data? Is it going to be used and protected, right? So a lot of questions are being raised, but 23andMe is not far off from that. Because of this major breach that they had last year, they kind of been in this whirlwind. They announced significant changes, including laying off 40% of its workforce just a couple weeks ago. They discontinued their therapeutic programs, which is massive. And a lot of members of their board resigned. So right now there is asking questions about, their stability and what's going to happen next. Are they also going to get bought up? Are they up for sale?
So this information is out there and exposed. And if some hackers have this info, this genetic code, is there anything that they could do with it that could be not so great, shall we say?
Absolutely. And I don't like to fearmonger, right?
Sure.
There's definitely a reality that needs to be understood by everyone who has given their genetic data to a private company. It's important to know what they intend to do with your data. I think a lot of people think that, hey, I'm going to get my genealogy. That's fantastic. Great. Let me understand, where my roots are. But you have to read the fine print. They also use the data for business development purposes. And what is that, right? That's market research. That's behavioral research. It's third-party collaborations. They're sharing it with their partners and other researchers. They're, using it to understand you as an individual for marketing and advertising and, product development. So this data is not only being used for genealogy, but to support and enhance their business operations. Now, something like this getting into the wrong hands can be used, by individuals that are looking to understand who you may be associated with. There's a case that happened a couple years ago, the Golden State Killer case. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but they used the genealogy database to find the Golden State Killer. Although it was a good thing in this case, to find this criminal who's been serial killing people. They brought him to justice. But the way that they found him was through DNA from a family member. Now, who knew that your DNA could implicate someone in your family? Can you imagine finding out that your cousin's data was used to implicate you in something?
Oh, man.
Without your knowledge? It's a slippery slope, you know? So that's one way it could be misused. Also, insurance companies, if they don't have the right practices and the right controls to be ethical and compliant, right, they could use that data to understand that you may have a pre-existing condition and make decisions not to provide you with life insurance. So it could be used in many different ways, which is why it's important to understand that your data is very, very important.
Yeah, this is really, again, living in the future. I mean, when we're giving out this genetic blueprint, there's a lot that goes with that. And I know, Ericka, that you've said that these companies, you're saying that they're specifically targeting Black Americans in the United States. Can you explain a little bit of what you're talking about there?
Well, yeah. So this is actually deeply personal to me because I realized that, for Black Americans, we're seeking to understand and reclaim history. Unfortunately, as a descendant of slaves, I know firsthand having our history and our heritage systematically erased. We know we have African ancestry, of course, right? But Africa is massive. It has hundreds of languages and cultures and many, many countries. So many of us are simply trying to answer the question, where is home? And the promise from these genetic testing companies to solve that mystery is what they're pushing. I remember during COVID, during Black History Month, I remember targeted advertisements on shows that, my family was watching for them to do genealogy testing. There was also online behavioral advertising, targeted to Black individuals who, have slave ancestry to understand where do you come from? Where is home? That's been very enticing for this community to solve that mystery, to understand, and for good reason. But knowing what I know after 20 years in privacy law, I can't help but feel like history is repeating itself. These consumer genetic companies are at the center of the headlines currently, and recent events highlight the importance of understanding what's at stake. It's just really important that we all understand that it is more than just giving you something that's valuable, there is always a business driving the background of this, and that the individual's data is very valuable. It's not just valuable to you as an individual, but to these businesses. It's important for them to have access to it for many reasons, not only to give you your genealogy, but also to support business and to also support research. When it comes to having Black Americans and Black people generally participate in research and medicine, there's not a whole lot of data because of the harms that have been done in the past in the name of science.
That's right.
So there is the stigma. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's absolutely a stigma. And the history of that has been documented about how science used to somehow prove race, which we know has been debunked. But yes, we're saying that this data is valuable, but can we quantify that? Can we put a price tag on just how valuable this stuff is?
Right. I did say earlier that genetic data is valuable. It's not just valuable to you, but to companies, researchers, and even the hackers that would sell it on the dark web. Let me break it down. Mm-hmm. We know that 23andMe experienced a breach that exposed the genetic information of 7 million people. They recently settled that for $30 million, which is significant, but that's just the beginning. A couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, GlaxoSmithKline publicly made a deal with 23andMe for access to 4 million genetic records at a price tag of $300 million. That's $75 per record, which is an amazing deal on their part. And GSK and other pharma need access to genetic data to develop drugs, to understand disease, and advance personalized medicine. Let me do a brief comparison. On the dark web, medical records are valued at $250 to $500 each, while something like a stolen credit card might go for as little as $5. That's because of the permanence of the data. That tells you a lot about the value of data like your genome or DNA. Your genetic data is unique, permanent, and can reveal a lot about your health and about your family, making it extremely valuable.
So what can we do to protect ourselves when it comes to this information that's online? I know we've been talking about people who have voluntarily given DNA samples and all of that, but in terms of everything we're talking about here, how can we protect ourselves?
Yes. I mean, all is not lost. You know, if you've already shared your genetic data, it's not lost. There are some steps you can take to protect yourself. First, you can review the privacy settings. You can adjust sharing preferences and opt out of research or features you're uncomfortable with. You can revoke your consent because you all consented to participate and share your data. You can request a deletion of your data, although previously shared and used data may be a done deal, right? Mm-hmm. But it will stop further use and sharing. And then you can monitor for breaches and updates, stay informed. And, you know, things are really evolving here in the U.S. We have a number of states that have adopted consumer privacy laws that give you rights, certain rights to your data. For example, you can request a copy of your data and learn how it's used, depending on the state that you're in. So just keep an eye on that. These steps can help you regain some control and reduce the risk further.
What you're talking about here is just, I think it gives us some pause and gives us some things to think about as, again, we live here in the future and all this stuff is available to us. But yes, really, we just want to think about what we're doing, what we're voluntarily giving away, and what the implications of that are. And I think this is just a fascinating thing to talk about and to think about. And it's very important as well. And we can all check out the website for Data Strategy Advisors, datastrategyadvisors.com. Ericka Watson is the principal and CEO of that company. Ericka from here in Chicago originally, and talking to us about this privacy issue when it comes to genetic mapping. Hey, Ericka, this is really something, and I'm glad we had the conversation today. Thanks for your time, and let's do it again.
I am happy to do it again, Michael. Thanks so much for having me.